Year's New Happy. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I went backwards.
We're in a time machine now.
Oh, snap. We're still in 2019. Welcome to Call to the Table, a podcast where basically we just rant about really great things, talk about Jesus, and are funny in between. Who's the most funny person, you may ask? Me. Just kidding. I'm Olivia, and I'm the one ring to rule them all. I'm also the elder one, so boom! I win. I've been thinking about that since breakfast.
I'm John. I'm the only male in the group.
I'm Jordan. I'm the one married to the only one male person in the group.
And I'm just here.
What's your name, dude?
Who are you? This twice.
Caroline. My name is Caroline, and apparently I have the memory of a goldfish.
So really, she's Dory, but a goldfish.
What are we doing again? What am I doing again? What's this red button on my... Never mind. All right, let's go.
P. Sherman, 42
Wallaby
Way, Sydney.
There you go.
Escape.
Oh, gosh.
Wow, that looks an awful lot like the word escape.
What did we talk about this time, Jordan?
We talking about communication.
Wow, I ain't good at that. Can you elaborate? I also have been thinking about this since breakfast.
You and I really need to do a skit together.
That'd be so funny.
I know. So yeah, we're talking about communication today, and I wanted to start it off going, back to the basics of what God's original idea for communication was. Who wants to start us?
Me.
Okay, go for it.
I have a lot of notes.
No.
It was open and face-to-face. Total understanding, perfect harmony. They literally looked upon the face of God. They walked and talked with him in the cool of the garden of the evening. And I said that in the wrong order, but I don't care. That's exactly what Adam and Eve did.
Mm-hmm.
And that is clearly not where we are now. Because when we pray, sometimes it feels like we are talking to thin air. That is not what Adam and Eve had to deal with.
I put seamless for me. I put that there was no hesitation. There was no awkwardness. It was just seamless. It just seamlessly happened.
I mean, I have on here, very similar to Caroline's, like friends, because they walked with each other while talking. Mm-hmm. They continued their walk with each other.
It was a relationship.
Yeah.
Like communication is basically an open dialogue, an open relationship between two individuals. And the term relationship is such a weird term right now because people immediately associate that with being in a partnership with one another, which is also a weird concept. But, communication to me is just an unfiltered relationship because that's what Adam and Eve had with God was this non-blocked.
Mm-hmm. Again, seamless. This just very natural. Natural's a better word to say.
Natural, yeah.
It's a very natural thing to happen. Yes. So how has that changed?
Look at me because I got the notes. Lack of understanding, little empathy, putting self first rather than the good of the whole, pride. I mean, what else do you want me to say?
I'm going this way.
Why?
Because you got mad at me the last time.
I thought, never mind. Not this way, this. It's so confusing! I'm so confused!
I recognized that I went the wrong way.
Away from the mic.
Rock back and forth. Rock.
I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you.
I know.
Goodbye, baby.
What was the question again?
How has it changed?
How has it changed? In my opinion, I think it's changed in lots of different reasons, but sin being one has kind of tainted communication. And then lack of vocabulary. I think the book of the Bible about Tower of Babylon
Oh, gosh.
Genesis
is honestly, I meant chapter. I mean book. The chapter in the Bible of Genesis.
The section.
That one. Basically, I think that kind of was the starting point of communication being changed, was the fact that everyone was kind of communicating in the wrong path, and so God was like, let me change physically your communication, your ability to communicate, but also sin.
Well, I mean, they still had communication problems. It's just God said, yeah, I gotta
I gotta fix
mess
it.
them up. So
Well-
yeah, you literally can't talk to each other now. Bam.
Right. Which,
So
then it grouped people together. So
Why
smaller
are we
groups of
speaking
people,
German?
smaller groups of people were then able to communicate.
they didn't know it was
with
called
just
German
them-
back then.
themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think sin had a lot to do with it.
Yep. But
Well, I mean, I think, because this is something I know you're about to hit on a little bit, is hiding. Mm-hmm. And with this, you can go into all forms of communication. Your verbal communication with, using specific words to mean one thing that have a different connotation. Mm-hmm. Or non-verbally with how you're looking at somebody, like Olivia looks at me half the time. Nice smile.
Thanks.
Uh,
9 times out of 10, that look is because you're about to touch me, but you're not touching me, and you're doing it right now. This look, is this the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Where I
That's one of
don't look at you, but I'm looking at you.
Wide-eyed, you can see the full white around her pupils. Just
That's 'cause I got big
nightmare.
eyes.
her pupils, or mean her irises. The pupils
Yeah.
are inside the iris.
Technicalities.
shush.
And the fact that even nowadays we still need that closeness even within communication, with some people more so than others with their love language being words of affirmation.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. That's
Me
John.
being one of them.
Yep.
Good job, John.
Yay!
Yeah, I mean, John and I, we talked about this prior, we did our notes together and everything, and John used the word when we were talking, he used the word restricted. And I think that's a huge thing. You look, as soon as sin entered the garden, that communication became restricted, and it became also very accusatory of, and very hostile of, well, it's so-and-so's fault. Well, it's so-and-so's fault. And
Well,
I
God,
think-
actually your
God,
fault,
God.
God.
It is
Yeah.
the woman's fault who you gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it was the snake's fault that you
made.
made. And the snake couldn't say anything because it was the devil. That was
He's
a
like,
whole,
yeah, I totally did this.
that's a whole other
It's all me.
conflict.
I told you. I had a better idea. You didn't listen. You banned me.
But yeah, I mean, it became very hostile and very cautious and very, going with the hiding. I feel like if you're not having a deep conversation like all of us do when we're together and you're showing yourself, it's very put on and it's very superficial.
So how was your day? Oh, it's
Yeah.
fine. How's your day? Yeah, it's fine,
Fine.
too.
Yeah. Very superficial.
Great.
Well, let's
We're
be-
both fine.
And that leads to misconception. Like, if you think about it, if you have a conversation like that,
It's not even a conversation.
no, but if you're the type of person I am who reads into every detail like that, if someone were to come up to me and be like, or I was like, oh, how you doing? Acting all friendly and whatnot. And they're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm like, what
You're
did
not
I
fine.
do?
You're not fine. I know you're not fine.
I did something wrong. Great.
I know when Jordan uses the word fine, more times than not means it's not fine.
But it also comes into the sense of, Liv, I'm going to go with you. So last year, starting in January, from January to May, there was a lot that went on with my family. And I
Yeah.
started hiding away and I started not communicating with everybody. When all that came out, I remember you coming, when that all came out and I told you finally,
Yeah.
you came to me and you were like, I knew something was wrong. And it was irritating me that you weren't communicating that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know what was going on. You just knew that there was something wrong. You didn't
Yeah.
know if it was against you. You didn't know if it was... And then on the flip side of that, once you found out, you were like, well, shoot, I wish you would have told me. I could have helped. I could have prayed for you. I could
Right.
have done more. And so that's been something for me a lot that I've had to learn, is that when there's stuff going on, my natural reaction is to bottle it up and to hide it away and not upset everybody. Because again, Caroline, we talked about this in the conflict, talking about conflict. I don't like conflict either. You and I both are not confrontational people like Olivia and John are.
Who just gave each other high
Seek
fives.
out conflict with other people, just each other.
Yeah.
Oh.
We don't seek out conflict
depends on
with
the
each other.
But it
It depends on the
happens.
group.
It does. But I mean, that's something that I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to upset anybody. And the
Right.
stuff that I'm going through, I don't want to be on y'all's baggage, because I know everybody else has baggage.
Right.
At the same time, that's hurting me and that's hurting our relationships,
Right.
all 4 of our relationships, in the sense of I'm worried about upsetting you or upsetting Caroline or upsetting John and their stuff being on y'all's backs, whereas for Olivia and John specifically, y'all don't carry baggage the way me and Caroline do.
Nah.
So,
Which you got frustrated about me the other night.
yes, John and I had a fight about this the other night.
I didn't even know they were having it. I was just in here dead to the world, and I walked in
You
there
were
like,
here for it too?
No.
No.
This wasn't last night.
Oh.
You said last night.
The
No,
other night.
The other
other
night.
night.
I said
I
the
always
other night.
assumed the other night means last night.
No, this was
I
Friday
was about
night.
to say, that's dope.
No, Friday night we had an argument about this because, again, everything kind of, in my opinion, rolls off of John's back and it doesn't roll off mine.
Which
So.
led to another argument immediately after the first one.
This is Jordan John Therapy. Thank you for joining us.
Well,
With
And
our
if-
2 therapists, our other friends, Caroline and Olivia.
Who also need therapy.
I'm in therapy.
For
What are
real.
y'all
Me
talking
too.
about?
I'm not currently in therapy right now. I was, and I am on track to go to school after I get married.
And then
to
she'll be a
become
real therapist.
So we'll
'cause
start
I'd like
using her
to.
more often.
Uh-huh.
I think that would be conflict of interest, though.
Because she
Yes.
needs money.
No, because family. You
Oh,
Family
yeah.
friends, you're not supposed
Yeah.
to treat
You're not
family and
supposed to
friends.
treat family and
Yeah,
friends.
Forgot about that.
I do it for free for these guys, but like I'm not allowed to license wise. Anyway, I digress. Going back to the beginning of this year, last year, 2019.
Yeah.
We're recording this in 2019, but I keep doing 2020 intros. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't have 2020 vision yet.
Oh! Some of us don't have 2020 vision. Some of us had to get glasses this year.
Me
'Cause
too?
I'm blind.
I've had them since 5th grade.
I didn't have to have them till now. Getting old.
I have 2021.
Go away.
Older than all of you, whatever.
By only a little bit.
Older than you by 2 years.
You're
No,
not 29.
Oh, I'm 28. I forgot.
I'm 20.
I
I turned
forget-
28 in March.
I forget how old I am, guys.
I forget how old. I
Look, you're
am.
older than me by only a few months. And
We digress.
we're older than you.
Anyway, going back to like not communicating what's going on, like that's a boundary thing, like we talked about in the other thing, other podcast as well, is the conflict one is knowing where your boundaries are and knowing when to open up those boundaries and those walls and when not to. And for you, if that means taking time to not, taking time to self-assess, like that's fine. I think the issue that it can create though is when you do try to carry that baggage on your own, when you do try to, like, I want to protect everybody else by not opening up and not saying, hey, this is what's going on in my head. This is what's going on in my heart right now. This is the family issues that I'm going through and I need support, but I don't know how to ask for support. That right there is releasing one of those boundaries where someone can then ask, do you want me to press further to ask you how to, open up more about this? And if you say no, then respecting that boundary of like, okay, I'm just going to pray for you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be here for you. But if you're like, yeah, I'd love for someone to ask me questions so I can process and maybe figure out what the root is, that's something that is free and willing, you're free and willing to do too, because that's a boundary that you're opening.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's important to self-assess in that sense of communication. How far are you willing to communicate when issues are coming up? And I'm just using this as an example. I am not good at communicating. Period. I am so bad at communication.
No, that's understandable considering she's the last person to text back in the
Oh,
group.
yeah, no, that's true.
But I say, just because she talks does not mean she's communicating.
Well,
Just a whole lot of hot gas.
I think I'm really bad at communicating my, internal turmoils in my internal self and knowing how to communicate my no's.
Yeah.
Not K-N-O-W, but N-O's.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at communicating
No, your
my
nose.
nose.
No S-E. You just now got
It
it.
took me a second. I was like, why did you just spell it nose? That's so dumb. But I'm the dumb one. Anyway, when I'm presented with an opportunity that I see is beneficial to me career-wise, I don't know how to say no to it.
Mm-hmm.
But is it going to benefit me mentally and emotionally? Probably not. You know, there are some that will benefit both. And I've learned how to create those boundaries. But how do you create those boundaries? You communicate, and you have to communicate. All that to say is during that time, yeah, it was really confusing, and it was very like, I don't know what's going on with Jordan. She's not communicating, and I don't really understand what's happening. And yeah, knowing I would have known how to better pray for you. I would have known how to better take care of our friendship and our relationship. But it's also a boundary that I respect.
Yeah.
It's a boundary that you wanted to keep up for a very long time, because you thought that was the most beneficial thing for you.
Yeah.
And I respect that. Because who am I to say your boundaries are dumb? Like, that's not fair. Like, no one's allowed to say that.
Disagree with your boundaries.
I'd say that to her a lot, actually, about her boundaries.
But you have a right to. You're my husband.
Yes.
Yeah, you have a different perspective. You are the husband. You are the person she is supposed to open up all boundaries with and have conversation and communication with in most, if not all, areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's your job as the husband to not approach her as oh, that boundary is dumb, you should be talking to people. It's how do you communicate with her on that? You know, I'm not saying this like, oh, let me give you therapy right now. Like, and it's your job as his wife, when he presents a boundary, to respect that boundary and respect that wall that you are now opening up and say, well, how can we best move this forward?
I think your boundaries are dumb.
We do not smash.
That's not a good way of communication.
We do not smash
I'm
through
being
walls.
truthful.
We create doorways.
You said before, be truthful. If you don't have anything to say that's not truthful, don't say it at all. I'm repeating yours. I think his boundaries are dumb. I'm being truthful. I'm just kidding. I love you.
Oh my gosh. My words are being used against me.
Your fault.
I plead the fifth.
You plead the fifth. Oh my gosh.
I have the right to remain
I plead
silent.
the First Amendment.
I have the right to remain silent. Anything I say...
The ability to is a different question.
No, I can't. Anyway, next.
So why is it so important to have communication? Like, how is that important for our relationship with God? Let's start.
Well, it's extremely important.
Why?
Well...
Because it is.
Why, Olivia?
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, because I do have notes on this. That's going to be my thing.
I have notes on this.
Okay. I said we can't understand God if we don't communicate with him. Because people have so many different ideas about who he is and what he stands for, but in the world today, most of it is totally messed up and twisted, and it's difficult to trust what you don't understand or what you think is something else. So we communicate with God not because he seems like a big Santa in the sky, but because he,
Have you never heard that expression?
I was a rich man. That's literally what you look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you look like, John.
You're
So he
welcome.
raises his hands to the ceiling. But he's not a big Santa in the sky. We don't pray because we want something out of him. No, because that's what the pagans did. They're like, please, almighty Zeus, don't strike our crops with plague. If we give you this pig, just leave us alone. Don't make any demigods or goddesses with our wives. We're very happy with who they are at the moment. Please, please, please don't turn our children into trees and dryads and stuff. Like, that's not who God is. We don't need to worry about God having children everywhere. Yeah, Zeus sucks. If you notice, I have a very strong...
Make sure we're not concerned about God having children everywhere. He only had one kid. I mean, that's not true, but true. Anyway.
He had one biological child.
Yeah, but
Biological child.
But
Zeus had many.
Yeah, and as you can tell, so God is not like Zeus. God is not like Santa. God is an entirely incredible person who...
You just blew Liv's mind.
I was always told God and Santa were like this.
Oh, honey, that's what I thought, too. Okay. Rabbit trail. I heard the funniest thing from one of my cousins when she was younger. We were at this Christmas church function, and I heard them talking about Santa. And it was the age at which they start kind of questioning things. And one of the girls said, I rearranged the letters in Santa's name and it spelled Satan. And then my cousin said,
Yo,
no.
I saw a comic strip that way, and it was so funny.
And my cousin said, no, I'm pretty sure he's with Jesus.
Aww.
And so, I thought that too. I was like, so this is how Santa exists. He was such a good person that God gave him immortality and a place to live in the North Pole and toys so that he could give kids toys because he's a good person.
Yeah.
That's basically what I thought.
Yeah.
And parents are so worried that if they tell their kids about Santa, then they'll stop believing Jesus. No, kids come up with good excuses for things.
Oh, yeah.
They're very imaginative.
But no, anyway, back to my point. God's communication with us is on the level of a friend, of a brother, of a father on multiple planes, as our king, as a deity, and to understand him as all of those different things, we have to openly communicate with him, which means reading the Bible, which is part of his communication for us, which means praying, which is...
The best wireless communication ever.
Preach. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which means listening, even if it feels like he's not there, looking for signs, not superstitiously, but, being open to that communication, because he will talk to you in strange and wonderful and wild ways, which is what I like about God. It's like in Chronicles of Narnia, how they talk about how Aslan is not a tame lion.
Mm-hmm.
God's not tame either. He does weird and wonderful things. I have...
The Lion of Judah.
So many angel stories I'd love to share on here. Maybe that could be just a thing. But anyway...
Story time with Caroline.
So, well, honey, yeah. So, it's difficult to trust what you don't understand. So, we can't trust God if we aren't actively communicating with him. And I'm going to open up and say that I do have some trust issues just because of the things that have happened in my life. And so, I'm learning how to trust God more because of, all of that stuff. Because if we don't trust him, then every human thing will pass away. You have to trust the God who will not pass away. And then I have one more point. You get to know your friends through talking. Why not do the same thing with God? It's super hard because, yes, he's invisible, and the lack of immediate feedback is jarring to our need for intimate and immediate connection. And that's why people give
I
up.
do not need intimate and immediate connection.
She's referring to John.
I saw the look in your eyes. You're like, how can I give her intimate and immediate connection right now? I felt it.
You know my husband so well.
The funny thing is, I wasn't even thinking that at the time, but I so should have been.
I know, what's wrong with you?
But it's a lonely feeling to talk to the air and feel like nobody's listening, which is not true, but still. And I know I already kind of said that before, but I wanted to read all my notes. So yeah, that's my
So
spiel.
I'm gonna take Liv's job and ask questions. Sorry, Liv.
My job.
I'm just kidding. So
she can grill me later.
okay.
I like well done. Medium is not done enough.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I
more of
like
a
medium
medium.
well.
I'm a medium rare.
Medium well, man.
Okay.
All right. So one of the things you touched on was, prayer being a big part of communication with God, but then you also touched on the fact that of praying and the back with the pagans asking a lot. So how do you merge the two? Because we are told to ask God, but how do you keep that communication to where you're not sitting there and being like, God, please give me money. God, please make the grass grow. God, please, like, how does that merge to where it's still an open and seamless communication, but it's not being afraid to ask, but not only asking.
Well, okay. So this gets back to the whole, it is a two-way conversation, but at the same time, it kind of isn't. To the point where it's okay if you sort of have a plan for, I want to praise God. I want to ask for certain things, but I also want to thank him because that's showing my trust that he already knows what I need before I have even mentioned it. Because if we take a look at some of the most beautiful prayers in Scripture, I love the prayer of Daniel. because he sits there and he acknowledges things that have happened that he and his people have done wrong collectively, but then he also goes back to God's promises and says, but you have said this, but I know you are going to do this. And it's not that he's having a conversation with himself, but he's reassuring himself. And then of course Gabriel comes like immediately after that and says, the minute you started praying, the second you started praying, I was sent straight from heaven to you. So that's how God works. And it's and they came to Jesus and said, teach us how to pray. Modeling your own prayer after that is also very helpful, because he does ask and give us our daily bread, help us to forgive, we praise God. We look forward to his coming, at the very end. And so, balance. I think is what I'm trying to say, balance. Yes,
yes,
ma'am,
Liv.
with your
Can I
hand
ask a
raised.
question?
Yes,
No.
Liv.
Are you done with your question?
Yes, Liv.
Okay. Gonna play both sides of this because I agree with everything you're saying. 100%. I think the way God communicates with us is personal, and I think the way that God communicates with us, and I can get into this in a second, is a lot. It has a lot to do with the Holy Spirit, and I think it has a lot to do with the love languages, especially, the way that we communicate with each other. I think God utilizes each other to communicate with us through him. I can go into the whole the Holy Spirit pouring into us to pour into others and speak for him. I could go into all of that, and I will, but I have one question for you because I would love to hear your side of it, and if everyone else wants to also kind of chime in.
Okay.
What would you say to somebody who is like, but I've never heard his voice?
Well, just because you don't physically hear the voice of God doesn't mean that he's not talking to you. I feel like for that person, I would say pray not so much to hear his voice in the way that you think you need to hear his voice. Pray for understanding in the ways that he is currently talking to you and the ways he has currently spoken to you in the past. Because I do believe that, God still does miracles,
Absolutely.
But most of the time, God tries to use things that are already in play. It's a funny thought, but God is a God of small things. I don't want to say he's a God of the mundane, but he uses just the small things to show who he is. Everything that he's made is incredibly complex. Seeing the hummingbirds over by my neighbor's garden, that's, just a sign that he's there.
Right.
Seeing beautiful flowers. He will speak to you in ways that he knows gives you delight.
Right.
Or in ways he knows you need to be challenged. Story time. I had a little miracle happen to me when I was in college, and I think I told you about it.
I'm sure you did.
But I was having an incredibly just bad day, bad week, bad month, bad year. That year was just bad. And this was when we still had the little iPods and the little iPod speakers and all of that. All of a sudden I hear music, and I had the window open, so I thought it was somebody from another dorm playing music or whatever. And then I start recognizing it as a ABBA song, which I love ABBA. It's Chiquitita, which is a very uplifting, sweet song about, tell me what's wrong. I'm a shoulder you can cry on. And I realize it's from my iPod. And I just got this overwhelming sense that God is telling me, you can cry to me. I want to see you smile again. Like, those were, actual words in the song. And I was overwhelmed. And I did go back and I was like, this is technically this first song on my playlist. But how did it suddenly turn on? So he communicated to me in that way. I didn't hear his voice, but he still communicated to me in that way. So, sometimes he uses little miracles, sometimes he uses big miracles.
Right.
But if you start looking for God, you will find him. And sometimes it's in the words of other people, like what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of being willing to recognize God in other forms than just straight up big old miracles. Because some people, it's like belief in God. Some people are like, like doubting Thomas, I will not believe that he has been resurrected until I can take my hand and touch his heart, physical heart, through his ribs, through the opening in his heart, whatever, he didn't go that far. But anyway, and then those people, sometimes they're not even going to accept it when they have a miracle in front of their faces. So you kind of have to act that way when it comes to God responding to you as well.
Right. I would say, Liv, the other part of this, and I mean, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. But a big reason why you were able to hear God's answer is you had a listening heart. If you have somebody who is praying for something to happen, or you're being challenged or whatever, but you're not listening, you're never going to see the answer.
Right.
I can ask John a question, but if I have my earbuds in and I'm not listening to him, I'm never going to hear that answer from him. So I think that's another big part of it. There's a author that I really like. His name's Richard Foster, and he talks about communication with God. And he talks about how, a lot of times we view prayer, which, is the ultimate kind of communication with God, or the most direct. I'm not going to say ultimate, but the most direct. He talks about how it has become so legalistic in the sense of, we go to church, you get on your knees, you put your hands in front of your heart, and you look up and you pray. And he said for him, there was like a year where he committed to praying every single day. And he found that if you go somewhere where you're comfortable, but you're still aware, like you're not falling asleep.
Right.
And journaling, or, just talking, not even in the sense of, dear Father, whatever, just start talking and having that conversation. Yeah, it's going to look strange to other people.
Yeah.
But it's so much more freeing. It's like calling somebody up on the phone and being like, hey, I just want to catch up. And it's that same thing. When you do that, you put yourself in a position to hear, and you put yourself in a position to listening to those responses.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a big thing, is don't pray in a stereotypical way unless that works for you.
Right.
Is find a way to communicate with God where it works for you, and you have that listening heart. Because again, if you're in the car and you've got music blasting and you're focusing on the road and you got friends in the back seat, you're not in the best position to hear what God is saying.
Exactly. So, would you say that there are other forms of communication other than actually vocally talking to each other?
Yes.
Yeah. John hit on that, which is
successful.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I think body language is a big one.
Mentally talking to God. I mean,
I'm
Well,
saying
no, just in
lack of words, and in general, but lack of words communicating with people. I know this is a rhetorical question, and everything I'm asking, I know that it's a rhetorical question, but for the sake of
it's a podcast.
It's a podcast one, and I know that there was a time in my life where I was like, well, I don't hear God. Is he really there? I was younger, but there was a time in my life I'm like, well, I talk to you every day, God, and you don't say anything to me, and I don't hear you. And I learned, there are non-verbal forms of communication. Fun fact, dancer. All I do is communicate with God while I dance, so I know we have the same opinion and same answers on pretty much all of this, but just for the sake of...
But sometimes God is silent. There was 400 years between
Absolutely.
the Old Testament...
You stole my comment!
The Old Testament and the New Testament, there was 400 years of
no
silence. With nothing.
Yeah.
And so that, granted, you start with the New Testament and you see how just off they had gotten, how legalistic they had
Absolutely.
got. But at the same time, that was a big, powerful thing. They were ready for this king to come in and take over. They knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
They
All they had was that promise.
Yeah, but the fact that he was silent, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in and say, something off of comedy, Bruce Almighty. God, give me a sign, and a truck full of signs just pulls out right in front of him.
Right.
God does have a sense of humor.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
There's a platypus. There's a platypus. Let's talk about that animal
Platypus.
for a second.
Especially one named Perry.
That doesn't count as a cartoon. The real animal, most ridiculous looking thing I've ever seen.
It lays eggs.
It doesn't make sense.
The mammal that lays eggs.
It's the one animal. I'm like, God, what were you thinking? He's like,
and a naked mole rat you don't do that with?
Those are cute.
See? Thank you!
Okay,
That's
are
cute.
you talking about Rufus from Kim Possible?
No, that's
She's
a cartoon.
No,
Okay.
about
the real
cartoons.
naked mole rats
I
are
also think
adorable.
naked cats are cute. Let's be real. Those little naked cats are cute. They're just cute and wrinkly. They look like old people.
Story time about God's sense of humor. So I'm really condensing this super fast because it's a really long story, but basically this was happening when we still have Soviet Russia. And there was a preacher who ended up being sent to prison in Siberia. Sucks. I mean,
That's
going
death
to
sentence.
Siberia is one of the, most awful places. And there was a guard there who was like, "Oh, so you're a preacher, huh? Well, let's see how your God sustains you when, like, I barely feed you, barely give you any water, all that kind of, crap." So anyway, he just didn't get food for a while, but he was sustained because, yeah, he's in this single little cell. He has the door, you can barely see through it, whatever. And then at the very top, like the back wall, you could see a little window where, like, he's in a cell that's below ground, so you can see the grass, but then there's still a little window up there with bars on it. And every morning he would hear this little scratching, and he'd go up there, stay on his bed, reach through the grate, and there was a piece of Russian black bread. And he's like, well, sick, but he doesn't actually eat the bread. He's like, I need to show this to the warden. I want to show him that God is actually providing for me. And so, I mean, I'm trying to remember how, well, God just supernaturally sustained him. Let's just say that. And he put the bread underneath his mattress and, so the guard wouldn't know what was going on. And then at the end of a certain amount of days, I don't remember, the warden's like, well, you're still alive, but has, God actually saved you? And then he just lifts up his mattress and there's the bread. And he's like, how have you been getting the bread? How have you been stealing? He's like, I haven't. Every morning at a certain time, I hear a little scratching the window. I go up and there's some bread. And it just happened to be right about that time. And so he goes up and the warden's able to see too. You actually see who it is this time. It's a cat. And the warden stands back and goes, that's my cat. He's been stealing the bread off of my table to feed you. And, of course, the whole family was converted. But that's one of my favorite stories, that God will use the supplies of his enemies to feed his own. And, I mean, that's just kind of like the story of Elijah with the crows. My mother likes to think that the crows took the food off of Ahab's table and brought it to Elijah, and because crows can mimic human voices, it's like, where is Elijah? Where is Elijah? Picks up the food, takes it to Elijah by the chariot.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there's my huge diversion about how God has a big sense of humor. But it's still God communicating with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was just kind of reinforcing the true fact that God doesn't necessarily have to vocally talk to us all the time. It's not necessarily that he's going to say, here is my answer. He might show it through another person. He might show it through an action. He might show it through nature. He might, there's different non-verbal things, and you touched on it really well. Having a listening heart is the only way we're going to do it. And I think one of the things that we as Christians in some areas of Christianity we forget is that God utilizes our spiritual giftings as a form of communication. A lot of churches kind of push that off and don't teach it as often, that being speaking in tongues or translating tongues or, now I'm not going to be able to think of all of them off the top of my head, and I had them all in my brain just 2 seconds ago.
Well, prophecy.
5-second rule.
Prophecy is one.
Hush.
Memory of a
being able
goldfish.
to, having prophetic visions, just being, naturally being able to heal. There's the being able to know the scripture beforehand, and there's the being able to see the spiritual realm, or being able to, discern different things and being able to discern in people. And that's his form of communication, not necessarily with us, but with each other, is being able to communicate through, speaking in tongues and having someone translate. Well, that's a conversation that's happening. And speaking in tongues is something that person, that's how they communicate with the Lord, is if they pray. And, biblically it says that if you're speaking in tongues over a mass of people, you must have a translator, or it is not speaking in tongues of my spirit, but it is the spirit of the enemy. That's an area where we're like, okay, well, who's going to translate it? But if it's one-on-one, that's a form of communication with God. They're communicating through the Holy Spirit, and that's what they want.
I would say typically if there's a speaking in tongues, God's going to make sure that there is a translator around.
Unless it is not of the Holy Spirit.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
If God has someone that's why I said if God has someone speaking in tongues. Yeah. If the devil is speaking in tongues, there's not going to be anybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think it's really interesting, as far as like, that's another way of God communicating, is if someone's speaking in tongues, God will provide somebody to translate. That's God speaking to us, and saying, hey, I got this for you. I've got this taken care of for you. Or communicating through someone who, discerns the spiritual realm, being able to see demons and see the angels. Well, that's God communicating to that person, like, maybe stay away from this area. It is not my area. It is not a place of my home. It is not a place where your feet should walk, because my feet do not walk there. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, it's not a verbal communication, but it's, how God communicates. And there's dancing, but I could go on and on.
and then there's the dancer.
Then there's my pulpit.
See, and
There's what I do. Communicate with God. Well, I also feel like he's given me a gift of discerning, but my communication and the way I pray and the way I talk to God is, usually in my car, just one-on-one conversation.
It's a great place to pray.
It's such a great place. But also dancing, like being able to intercede. When I was in Houston, there was the piece that I was in for a very long time, I think all 3 years, called Innocence Not Lost. It was about sex trafficking, and it was about being snatched up, and this woman's story about being taken and tainted, and her hand just not being able to see that childlike wonder anymore, but seeing a dirty hand that has seen a lot of life that she didn't want to live. And every time I do it, my very first prayer would be, Lord, let me intercede for somebody. Let me do this for somebody else. Yep. Whether I know them in the audience or not in the audience, and somewhere across the oceans. Let this be for an intercession. Let this be intercession for somebody else, and it's a form of communication.
Hey guys, this is where our ad break would go, that is, if we had any ads. So far, our only sponsor is God, without whom none of this would be possible. If you'd like to sponsor us, you can email us at calltothetable@gmail.com, that's all lowercase and no spaces, or you can visit us at Facebook and Instagram under Call to the Table Pod, Pod. Again, that is all lowercase, no spaces. Liv is setting up a Patreon soon, but until that's live, please visit our social media for more info. By the way, for those of you who decide to become Patreon sponsors for us, you will have the option to get all of our episodes ad-free. So you won't have to listen to my beautiful voice telling you about lovely products. How dare you? But I digress. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye. Yeah, you had a final question.
Well, I just want to kind of go tie it back before to, the whole point of any communication, especially with communication with God, is, I hate saying this, but is to gain. You are gaining either his love or his support, or a friend's love or a friend's support, or knowledge, or the whole point of communication is that there is a gaining or a giving in the sense.
And the only thing we're losing is ignorance and pride and everything else that is bad.
And sometimes just time.
And sometimes.
It is never time lost. It is time well spent.
Amen to that. So I would say, I'm going to kind of do two different points because we've kind of talked about one of them already. What effect does the lack of communication have on a relationship, whether it's relationship with God or, just personal relationships? And what advice would you give to somebody to help with their communication so that there isn't a lack of communication?
I have one note.
Go for it.
You grow apart. There is no longer a relationship if you are not having that communication at all. Because, I mean, that's what happens, high school friends.
Yeah.
You're with them every day, 5 days a week, which is not every day, but I don't care.
It's close enough in high school.
4 years or plus 4 years if you've been with them all the way from elementary school. And then you go off and you live your life and you see them at reunions and you talk awkwardly about possibly getting back together, and then you never do because
That's why I'm not going to mine.
your schedules are too different now on all of that stuff, which, it's hard. Because, I mean, I have some people that I like to reconnect with, but because people are, I mean, it's hard not to get set in your ways once you have a regular job and a regular friend group and all this other stuff. But, like, what's nice about God is that he's not stuck somewhere. He's, like, always around you. So I'm not going to say it's super easy to pick up the communication lines again, because a lot of that deals with you and your own hang-ups. But you grow closer to someone by talking to them and spending time with them, and you just lose that. You grow apart. There's no longer a relationship if you don't talk to them.
So what advice would you give to somebody?
Take baby steps. I learned this from somebody in college. She said she started really reading her Bible when, I don't remember if it was a pastor or who. Somebody said, look, don't act like you have to have an hour-long Bible study every single morning from the get-go, because then you're just not going to want to do it. You're going to be intimidated. You're going to feel bad. No. And you're not going to gain anything from that. Take 5 minutes. And then when you feel the need, the hunger start to take over, you'll extend it to 10 minutes. And then 15. And then 30.
Yep.
And then however long you feel until you feel fed. And that's how you do it. I mean, you don't just plunge into a relationship with a new person all of a sudden just, this is my deepest, darkest secret.
I did!
No, you didn't.
I did with you! I plunged into that relationship fast. In fact, you got mad at me for it.
Don't be like Jordan. Don't be like Jordan.
Well, no,
In that respect.
I disagree.
In that respect.
That's where I'm going to disagree with you on that,
Okay,
though.
go ahead.
All right, Liv.
I was saying
Your turn.
that kind of halfway,
Yeah, no,
laughingly,
but
but go ahead.
here's
I wanna
a
hear what you
good
have to say.
opportunity to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
If you've listened to our communication or conflict podcast. I disagree, because I think finding your format of communication and utilizing that to benefit your relationships, I think is the best way to grow a relationship. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for the fact that I wasn't, if I was closed off and I took those baby steps, I would never have a relationship with anybody.
I get that.
Because being a more extroverted human being and being more like, I trust before you give me a reason not to type person. I'd never have friendships, because I would block myself off so much that I would be by myself, and that goes against everything that I am. So diving deep and being completely honest and open communication as far as like who I am and maybe my deepest, darkest secrets is what progresses my relationships.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, if you want to take it a step further, dating, if I took it baby step by baby step, I wouldn't be in the relationship I am today, because I wouldn't have had the confidence to talk to David about the things that I was too scared to talk about with any other relationship or just in general. And he loves me no matter what. And that's the representation of how God is. He's going to open his hand up and be like, just talk to me. Just converse with me. Tell me right away. I'm going to love you no matter what you put in my hand.
And that makes sense. I mean,
So-
I am a person who I want to take baby steps, because I
Absolutely.
have had...
Hurt.
Okay, a different example from what you guys have heard. There was a girl in middle school who, we weren't like super good friends or anything, but, I told her some things. And then all of a sudden on the bus one day, I hear lower classmen repeating those things to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, excuse me? I mean, it didn't bother me, because, I mean, she was basically after the divorce, I started sleeping in the same bed with my mother, which is actually what happened to my mother and her mother after the horrific car accident that killed my grandfather, who was like my age, and my infant aunt. And so it's like, yeah, that's something people do in other parts of the country. In other countries, people sleep together and it's not anything sexual or wrong, you know. And I didn't say all of that to them, but I was like, yeah, we sleep in the same bed together, who cares? And that immediately shut him up, you know. But I was like, I have learned that I cannot say a lot of things to you,
And
so that's just from my experience,
Right.
But I get where you're coming from too.
And it's just your communication format. And if you don't mind, to kind of sum up the question that you were asking, what effect does lack of communication have? It is you grow apart, but I think it also it leaves room for assumptions. You know, not communicating
mercy, yes.
and not, you know, over communicating sometimes. I'm an over communicator. I'll say the same thing 6 times, but I teach high schoolers.
You have
Amen.
to.
You have
Repetition,
to.
repetition,
Just repetition.
repetition.
And in different
Did I mention
ways.
repetition?
And you have to communicate in different ways. But lack of communication, honestly, makes you look ignorant.
Yep.
You as the person who's lacking the communication, because you're trying to be this person who doesn't need to communicate. It also grows people apart, but it leaves room for accusations and assumptions that no one needs. You know,
Yep.
like, just communicate and be honest with people. And you know, like I said, dive deep into that communication. Be willing to be vulnerable to an extent with people that you trust. But again, like I said, I'm the type of person that I'll trust you till you give me a reason not to.
Yep.
And that's just different things.
That's
yeah.
who I am. You know, like
I'm glad to know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Like, I've had a lot of issues in my life where people have taken my trust and thrown it out the window, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I know not to trust you again. But that doesn't change, for me personally, that doesn't change whether or not I'm going to meet someone new and not trust them and put that boundary up, because that's
That makes
against
sense.
my nature.
Yeah.
As who I am. So, you know, I'm that's what I think about communication. And also, communicating helps grow that trust with the person. So me being a communicator, me wanting to communicate with people, has led me to this I'm going to trust you till you give me a reason not to mentality. Lack of communication would close me off a lot more than I think I could be. So,
All right, John, what effect does lack of communication have, and what advice would you give to somebody concerning communication?
Well, I mean, not all relationships can just grow apart. As, for instance, in a marriage, a lack of communication, yeah, it can eventually lead to growing apart. But there's a lot of nastiness before you get to that.
Yeah.
And speaking from experience, lack of communication leads to going down completely and totally wrong paths on a personal level and as a relationship. Because if you're not communicating to the point where the other person knows what you're talking about, you're going down street 72 and you need to be on street 6. I know that doesn't make sense what I just said, but the basic premise is there. You need to be going in the right direction, but if you can't communicate correctly or well or at all, guilty.
you're going down a different...
You're going down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And
You're not opening yourself up to hearing what path you're supposed to be on.
And that definitely leads to a lot of problems. It leads to people not understanding. It leads to, in a lot of cases, divorce. I'm fortunate enough to have a wife that knows how to kick me in the head when I need to be kicked in the head.
Literally. Yep. So what advice would you give to maybe a guy who doesn't like communicating, because you don't?
That's the funny thing I
Mikey,
do.
just do it.
Just do it! Nike.
Don't assume that the other person knows.
Yeah.
It's a good
I mean, as I've said this before, it's better to say something over again than to risk the chance of it never being said again.
Yeah.
And you get annoyed at me when I say things, and you're like, you've already told me that. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get annoyed. It's just I'm letting you know you've already told me.
It
That's
sounds
really-
like you get annoyed.
That's really good, though. Like, take the risk of saying something over again and eliminate the risk of not saying it at all. Like, that's really good. I really like that.
Mm-hmm. Good job, John.
I mean, sometimes, someone's not going to get it the first time.
Yeah.
As long as, and when you reiterate your stance, you're solidifying your stance.
And when literally the exact same thing is being said over and over again,
Definition of insanity.
think of a different way of explaining it.
You took
or
mine.
asking it.
You took mine.
Because that just happened, 3 nights ago with us? 2 nights ago?
Yeah. It was just, yeah. I think for me, the lack of communication, it reinforces everything that happened in, when Adam and Eve sinned. It reinforces the hostility. It reinforces the conflict, whether that's within yourself or within the relationship or whatever. And it reinforces that hiding and that superficial kind of, that need to be superficial and not be open. I think that's what lack of communication does. Mm-hmm. I know that, Liv, when you first moved back to Texas, or moved back here from Texas, there was like a month or two where, the three of us had to get back to being in regular communication, and it was very awkward and very superficial the first couple times we hung out because we hadn't seen you. Yeah. And the few times we had seen you, or not seen you, but the few times we talked to you, it was over the phone, and it was, we would have long conversations, but it's very different when you're in person. I think the best advice I would give for somebody when it comes to communication is try to say things or do things in the sense of like your body language that is going to be easier for the other person to understand.
Yeah.
So I know that we touched on this a little bit about the love languages. This is something me and Caroline have had to go through. Me and Caroline have very different love languages.
And this is specifically in relation to birthdays and Christmas.
Yes.
No, seriously.
It is. Where she is very much a gift-giving person. Mm-hmm. She wants to get gifts. She wants to give gifts. That's her love language.
And they always have to be... I try and make them gifts that, even if it's just one thing, it's a really cool personal thing. Like, one of the best gifts I have ever given her was one of the creators of VeggieTales autographs, because he came to my university at the beginning of second semester one year, and I was just like, I am getting Phil Vischer's autograph. I am surprising the heck out of her, and I had to sit on that thing for a whole 6 months, and it was burning a hole in my pocket, and I was so happy when I could finally give it to her. She was literally speechless. It's one of the best gifts. Well, after...
Yeah, I screamed.
I hid it in a VeggieTales DVD too, and she was like, what's so special about this? Open the DVD. It was so great.
But for me, I'm very much a, personal time. I want to go and do stuff, and y'all have seen that in the sense of, the vacations we plan and stuff like that. It's going and it's doing and it's experiencing something together. Well, that's been something me and her have had to work through, because I naturally give her a gift that's going and doing something. She naturally gives me items, and we're speaking our love languages to somebody that's not the love language. And John and I, we had an easier time with that when we were just dating. We looked up the love languages. His is words of affirmation, so it was just more of making aware that I need to be praising him and building him up. Mm-hmm. He knew it was spending time with me, so it was just, okay, I need to make sure I'm not on my video games all the time. So it was easier for us. But I think that's the biggest thing is, especially if you have a close friend or you're dating even if you're just dating somebody, look up each other's love languages. Yeah. See what's the best way to communicate. And that you may not be able to do it all the time. Obviously Caroline can't take me in the middle of, May and take me to the beach.
She has expensive taste.
I do.
It's hard.
It's not hard. Take me to a beach and leave me there. I'll be fine.
Jordan, we don't live near a beach.
I know.
And the Atlantic Ocean
I'll
is
put you on a beach in Georgia.
Okay.
The Atlantic Ocean is cold.
I know, and you didn't like it.
No, it was a gross beach. That was just disgusting. Come fight me. Galveston's nasty.
Well, Galveston did get screwed over, by the hurricane. So.
Oh yeah, Harvey was awful. Let's be real.
I'm not talking about that hurricane. I'm talking about the historic one.
Oh yeah, well there's that too. But Harvey also messed it up pretty bad. So.
But yeah, that's what I would say is any relationship, any deep relationship you get into, figure out that person's love language.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a big form of communication for you guys to do together. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. You gonna do it?
Take it away, John.
This has been another episode to Called to the Table. If you would like to get in contact with us to have any questions, comments, or prayer requests, please let us know at Called to the Table Pod with Instagram and Facebook, and email us at calledtothetable@gmail.com. And have a wonderful and blessed day.
Bye.
You need to say something.